Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss. And we're here tonight. Uh, it's February 24th at 6 p.m., a little bit different than my normal lineup. We're coming to you live with a great event because we love to make sure that the public are informed, that you know what's going on in the government around you. And towards that end, we'd love to speak to candidates who are running for elections from the local level all the way to the federal, the national presidential candidates. We'd like to make sure you're informed on all of that. So today we will have the opportunity to be speaking with a New York City candidate, Mr. Elijah Diaz. I'm going to bring him on, and we're going to be speaking with him a little bit about his election that is going to be coming up. And we're going to be talking about how that's going to affect his constituents, his own life, and possibly, well, God knows, it's New York City. It could be the entire nation. We'll find out.
hmm
Elijah, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Mike. God bless you. God bless everybody. And I can't ask for a better day. I can't ask for a better evening sitting here with you. And I'm excited to get this going.
All right. Well, I know that we're lucky that we get to have Elijah today because I think it's Tuesday or is it a little bit later this week that we're going to have petitions in New York
Tomorrow.
State are starting. It is tomorrow. That's right.
hmm
And so you're going to be out every night, I would
Uh,
presume, uh, getting signatures. Am I right?
yep, that's right. My goal is 500 at least. That's
Okay.
that's the, that's the par.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you can get many, many more than that because it is a race for the New York City Council, the 45th district. For those who don't know much about New York City, that's in Brooklyn.
hmm
So you're going for the Flatbush area
That's right.
to represent them in New York City politics. That's a pretty big, I mean, the district alone, talking about Brooklyn alone, you're talking about Brooklyn's as big as God, most mid-sized cities. And New York City, one of the most powerful, most spoken about cities in the world. I guess that's the way I would lead into the first question I'll ask, and something I think is important for everyone.
hmm
Elijah, why are you running for an office and why in New York City?
Well, Mike, I'm very comfortable in New York City, and I love the big stage. I'm 22 years old, so a lot of people are asking me, why are you running? You're 22. You could have been, in college doing X, Y, Z, and it kind of bores me in a sense. I don't find an interest in not to say smaller events, but I really love that drive, that tenacity, that competition. And I found out very early that my purpose in life was to serve people. Back when I started my company at age 19, I had the ambition to actually serve the small business community, serve nonprofits in a way that you know coupled with my expertise, but also in a way that was changing lives, changing perspectives, changing my society. So that was extremely influential in building up to this campaign. So I'm excited to represent Flatbush. Born and raised here, I know everyone in my immediate area and going beyond that. And I think that we definitely need a change. We need a change. We've been underrepresented for too long. I'm the first candidate in this district to challenge the Democrats. So, if that's not a telltale sign of what New York City is going through right now, I don't know what would be.
Well, you're not wrong. You're the first one to go back. We're going back past Jumaane Williams,
Yep,
uh,
1992.
1980. That's a district all but held by Democrats with really no opposition. A couple of independent candidates pop up once in a while, but it's always a fight between Democrats. Again, that just goes like, wow, taking on the big fight, many would say. And you are a Republican
Yes.
with conservative views based
Yes.
on your website, some of the things, but that shouldn't be the way you're defined because I see when I go to your website, and by the way, folks, to find out more about Elijah, and you'll see the link in the description after the show. Your website is Diaz for City Council.
Yeah,
That's the word for, FOR. So Elijah for citycouncil.com.
or Diaz.
You
Diaz.
mentioned equity,
Hmm.
multiculturalism, that you're a lifelong New Yorker and a small business owner as
Yes.
some of the things that motivate you in this election, as well as reasons why your issues, some of
Mm.
your priorities
Yeah.
in there. At least that's what I'm getting from the website.
Yeah.
Am I misunderstanding that?
No, no, you're absolutely right.
Okay. Then let me ask you. Let's start off with, so you're 22 now,
Yes.
but you were a businessman as of 19. What
Yes.
kind of business?
Marketing.
Okay.
Yeah, marketing for small business owners. I studied journalism in my brief time in college, so I was very good at videography, photography. I was putting together news packages, involved in the political scene, but more on the behind the scenes side. So I thought, why not utilize my expertise in something that I actually enjoy and make a company out of it. I saw the need for it, and I saw that even as a young business owner, it was really hard to get my marketing out there. Doing it alone, being a solopreneur, bootlegging it on your own. That's a story that you hear almost all entrepreneurs going through. If you didn't come from a background of money and you're trying to become an entrepreneur, that's what you got to do. If not, you have to take out insurmountable amount of loans and pay off the interest, pay off that debt, and most likely, if you're a small business owner, you're going to fail within the first 3 to 5 years of incorporation.
Yeah. Tends to happen. The biggest hurdle for almost all new businesses is the first 3 years
Mhm.
to reach break even in the business itself before you can start actually paying back anything you've invested into it. So that is something we see very common for most businesses, and whether you're large or small.
Mhm.
So that is something admirable. I mean, at 19, I remember when I was at 19, well, I had joined the Marines. I was
Thank
in
you for your service.
college, and that was about it.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
No, no problem. I loved my time in the Marines. Loved it. Um, but that was in those wild, crazy days back in the 1980s, mid
Mhm.
80s. I was your typical Marine. For the good and the bad of it, I was the typical college student for the good and the bad of it.
Uh-huh.
So it's pretty impressive to see someone who uh, took life more seriously than I was at that time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I am impressed by that. What led you to politics?
I kind of looked into it a little bit when I was in college, again studying journalism, and as controversial as it gets, Donald Trump really was the guy that brought me into politics. I know in New York that's not a very favorable perspective, but being that Donald Trump was an entrepreneur now and he's the president once again of the United States, it's crazy to see his transition from entrepreneur to politics, and I truly believe that whatever you may think about Trump, we don't have to discuss that. But for me, just watching him make that transition and everything that he endured was really, it spoke to me on a personal level, and that's why I respect the president the way that I do. And that's also what led me into pursuing a career in politics.
Well, I'm a little bit older. I remember before 2015, I remember Donald Trump in the 1970s, 1980s,
Mhm.
1990s, when he was a darling of New York City, New York State, and Democrats,
Mhm.
and Republicans as well. He was a major donor for everybody, and he was a businessman internationally known, even throughout those many, many decades up until he actually got into politics. And then he suddenly became the demon to some and a savior to others.
Public enemy number one.
Yeah. So he's neither the best or the worst. He's just a man to me, and he's got a vision. Whether people like it or not is a different question. He definitely has a vision, and inspiration comes from anywhere and anyone. I
Mhm.
think that's the way to look at it.
Right.
And that's one of your sources of inspiration. Okay, I understand.
Mhm.
Now, by the way, I should ask, you have family in New York? Do you have siblings or anything?
Yep. Yep. All my family is in New York. New York and Florida is really the two big ones.
Okay, so they must, your mom, your dad must be very excited, very proud that
Yeah,
you're running for an elected office.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah. So was my mom, except I was a Republican. She's a Democrat lifelong.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Oh, my
part
mom was
upset
too.
her a little bit.
My mom was too. But
Yeah.
we had a couple of nice conversations, and I think she's on the right track now.
No. Well, my mom's still a lifelong Democrat, but she loves her son, and I love my mother, and
Of
she's my
course,
number one supporter. So I'm perfectly happy with that.
of
We
course.
just
Likewise.
Thanksgiving, we just don't talk about what I'm doing as much.
And even then, you kind of got to back down. You're not going to
Yeah,
win that conversation.
that's all it is. Uh, we don't take the Joy Reid approach to things.
Hmm.
You may have heard Joy Reid just got fired. Um, so some people are, I'm sure there's someone out there crying right now,
Hmm.
and there are many more of us who are elated. But that's me personally. I'm speaking for myself. Don't answer.
Yeah.
That's a separate issue. Um, that being said, and let me get back to talking about you and your race. So
Hmm.
you've been involved in politics because of some of the inspirations, which also led to you being involved in business.
Hmm.
You're in one of the biggest hotbeds of politics in the entire country. We
Yep.
currently have Kathy Hochul and Letitia, Attorney General Letitia James are fighting with the federal government at this moment. We have
Hmm.
the issue of open immigration, open borders, and illegal immigration that's affecting the entire nation. New York is the centerpiece of that at this moment.
Hmm.
We have a mayor that's God knows what's happening with Eric Adams, and supposedly Andrew Cuomo is entering into the race. We'll get into that in just a moment. This is a crazy time in
Hmm.
New York politics.
Hmm.
Let me ask you, what are the people of Brooklyn saying about all this? Regardless of, before we get to the election, what are you hearing from people in Brooklyn about all of this?
Yeah. It honestly depends where you go. I think that we've been stuck in that standing in positions type of argument where we're only going back and forth. The argument is not about politics, whether this policy is right and wrong. The argument really in the past 8 years is, oh, are you pro Trump or against Trump? And that's also a big part of it is the mentality that we're in as a city. So I think Brooklynites, depending on where you go, if you go somewhere like Bushwick or Dumbo or Park Slope, you're going to hear a very different story than if you're going to Flatbush, Canarsie, Marine Park, different areas, all three of which are in my district. But I think that the way that it's going right now, and I'm talking specifically about Brooklyn, but it's happening in other parts of the city, is that we're going to see an exodus of the Democrat Party in the next few years. It's no longer the party that supports the working man. It's no longer the party that is advocating for legal immigration by the bounds of our Constitution. It's now the party of radical left wing propaganda, and if you don't agree or you fall anywhere in the moderate to centrist to even the right, you're criticized, you're slandered, you're canceled. And Brooklynites are tired of it. New Yorkers are tired of it. We can't really come to a common ground, so nothing is ever going to get done if we're just one is fighting the other. It's really just a pain to be involved in that as I don't know, lack of better term, civilian, someone who's not running for an elected position. But even as an elected official, you kind of see the infighting happening between them too. So I think that, what the Democrats have done while they're in control right now of New York, they deserve everything that is coming to them, as far as, the cases against Adams, the, going against Kathy Hochul and congestion pricing. it's a telltale sign of what they've been doing for the past 3, 4 administrations.
Well, you are correct. There is a lot. Almost any pundit that you would speak to, or any political commentator, whether it's on CNN or MSNBC or Rising. So whether you're talking more libertarian or centrist or to the far left, they're all saying that the Democratic Party is trying to find its way, that they have lost their voice.
Hmm.
And we're seeing that in much of the polling out there, because when we see polls where Donald Trump is pulling in 54% of America, well, that includes Democrats who are agreeing with many of the things that he promised that he is doing or seems to be working towards doing. So um, you're not wrong when you say the Democrats do have an issue with their voice. And it seems to be very clear here in New York State and New York City
Hmm.
that there isn't a clear answer. I mean, I point to Kathy Hochul, who at the beginning of this year decided that after months and months of saying New York subways are safe, and then putting in, first she tells us that the subways are safe. Then she puts in 750 National Guard
Hmm.
into the subway system and tells us that the subways are safe. Then a woman gets burned alive.
Hmm.
And she, 2 days later, gets onto another subway car, takes a selfie during a photo op, and says the subways are safe. I don't think anyone in New York City, and I live in New York City, I'm in the Bronx,
Hmm.
nobody I spoke to said they agreed with her. And they thought it was tone deaf, and it played out very badly both for Democrats and for her, um, because there was no solution. So let me ask you, in Brooklyn, an area that's known for being rambunctious from time to time.
Hmm.
Uh, in fact, it was one of the areas, not your area, but parts of Brooklyn were known for part of the BLM Summer of Love, some would call it.
Yeah.
Others of us would call it riots. But that was in Brooklyn, in New York.
Yeah.
How are they feeling about the subways? Are they feeling safe? Do they feel safer now based on what Kathy Hochul has been saying, or are they hoping that it will become safer?
Yeah, I mean, even in Brooklyn, that conversation always warrants a pessimistic response, and I don't care what the Democrats say. Oh, our subways are safe. Oh, the people love our subways. Oh, it's safer. We have more police in the station. Nobody. You talk to a real New Yorker on the street and you ask them right before they walk into the subway, they're not excited to go in there. They know what to expect. You expect homelessness. You expect crack addicts on there. You expect rambunctious teenagers. You expect, some kind of crime that's going to happen. It's, it's common knowledge. And I think as a New Yorker, you understand this. It's kind of like if I'm speaking to an audience outside of New York right now, they're the only ones that can't really feel it. But being a New Yorker, you kind of understand, that dynamic that you're going onto the trains not knowing what to expect at any time of the day. So it's people that were a part of that movement, they're also feeling the same way. And I think it's a part of that mentality that I was talking about before, that they're going to continuously vote Democrat despite however they feel, because they don't have that representation. And I think that going forward, I see the Republican Party starting to come out now, and go into these neighborhoods where they once could not go, and start speaking to the people, start speaking reasonably, and saying, "Hey, this is what we're going through. We're all going through the same thing." Just as black and brown is a minority, or was a minority in this country, the past 2 decades ago. Now the Republicans are saying, "Hey, we feel you on this. We've been the minority for a long, long time, and we are now the party of the working class. We're now a party of representation, inclusivity, and in a conservative setting that is beneficial to the people, to everyone, not just whoever is falling for that bit of propaganda that they're trying to teach in the schools, teach in the media, teach in social media." So it's it's uh it's a different time, I would say. And being that we're having a shifting majority in this country, people are going to be exposed a little bit more to that changing dynamic. So it's going to be fun to see. Definitely, it's going to be fun to see.
All right. Well, let's actually start delving into that a little bit. And I asked about the subway because it is one of the top issues in New York City.
Hmm.
Um, is crime and violence, which the subway has become a focal point for several years now. Whether it's Dan Penny or just
Yeah.
people being pushed in front of subway cars, the woman being set on fire, several people being shot or stabbed. This has become somewhat commonplace. So it is one of the when we talk about crime, that is the first thing many people think of,
Hmm.
but it's one of several issues that are very important right now. Obviously, jobs also very important for many people. The cost of housing, the cost of healthcare, these are also very important issues. What are you hearing from your constituents, or hopefully your constituents in the future in Brooklyn? What are they listing as their top issues to be addressed going 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, right now the number one in my immediate area, and delving a little bit. Well, I'm immediately in Flatbush,
Mhm.
and delving a little bit more towards East Flatbush as well. The number one problem is homelessness and drug addiction. They kind of go hand in hand, and
Sure.
going into that housing crisis as well. I think public safety, it all wraps together. But you're seeing that these homeless and drug addicts, you see they're going into the subway systems for warmth because, let's face it, we've had a really rough winter and there's no other place for these people to go, unfortunately. So it's, you see them sleeping on the trains, taking up the little 3-row cars, taking a nap, whatever they have to do to survive. And it's creating a big public safety issue. Not even, they don't even have to commit a crime, but just that look that you have homeless in your area, you have needles on the floor, you have people spitting and using the bathroom in the streets. You're not going to get a positive reaction out of that ever. And I think it just makes sometimes it makes it seem worse than it actually is, and people are seeing these subliminal traumas around them. So, being that it's going to be a big task to overcome that, I think public safety is going to be, a big task to overhaul. But I think we need to allow the NYPD to do their job, and we need to not let criminals out the next day. We need to be able to protect our women, our children, our citizens. And it just upsets me to see that we need to be respecting we need to be respecting our women. We need to be respecting our daughters. We can't allow their oppressors, or somebody that, god forbid, I don't even want to say it, but you know a little girl gets raped, and her attacker is let out the next day. That's not something that we should be allowing in our city. And so you say public safety, these are legitimate things that happen, that go on in our city every single day, and it all ties together. So it's very frustrating. That holds a personal sentiment to me. So we need to do a better job and allow the NYPD to do their job and keep us safe.
Okay. Uh, as you can see, folks, by the way, we're just going to take a quick moment. I just wanted to mention for in the chat, whether you're on finding the show on YouTube or Facebook or Rumble, I think there's a couple other, you've also linked it as well. Anyone who may be seeing this, you can also try and join us since we are live to leave a question in the chat. And time permitted, we'll try and make sure that Elijah is able to answer some of your questions as well. So I did want people to know that that is possible. Um, now, crime, safety, um, a lack of housing, illegal immigration. These are all important issues that you're
Mhm.
bringing up.
Yeah.
And many of them seem to be interrelated. One thing that I think everyone in New York City can say is that we don't have a lot of answers about this. We don't have clarity. I can point to back in November of 2024, I had spoken to a city council member in a live event, and I had asked them the question, what are you going to do? This is after the election. And I asked very simply, what are you going to do if Donald Trump cuts off funding to New York City and or New York State because of the illegal aliens and the sanctuary city status of New York City? They had no answer. They had never even considered that that was possible. We now know that's a reality.
Mhm.
We have Letitia James and Kathy Hochul are threatened with being arrested. That Pam Bondi, the Trump administration are looking to cut funding. In fact, they've cut funding $80 million from FEMA that was to be used for illegal aliens and
Mhm.
their housing, which is a small drop in the bucket of the $2 billion a year over the last 3 years. New York State's been spending about $2 billion per year on illegal aliens in terms of their housing. In
Mhm.
fact, it works out to about $73,000 per illegal alien in America. That's what we spend on them. That's from your tax dollars, my tax dollars, going directly to them, either in terms of housing and or food and or stipend for them to walk around and have spending money.
Yeah.
How would you address that issue? Let's start with illegal immigration. We can go on into all the other subjects, the ones that you believe are the most important. How would you address that for your constituents in Brooklyn and New York, of course, as well?
Well, I think that that issue is, it goes beyond what I'm capable of doing, but I think that, if it comes down to working with the Trump administration in facilitating that, that deportation process, I would be in full support of that. I think it's a hard thing to talk about and try to be empathetic about, because we're talking about the good and the bad. We're talking about people who have been waiting 5-10 years in the process trying to come to America, live out the American dream, but now they're being mixed in with the same stereotype as Venezuelan nationals who are coming here, legitimate gangs who are coming here to commit crimes and get free services. So definitely that's something that I would work directly with the Trump administration to facilitate, and my constituents as well.
Let me clarify myself if I wasn't clear, and I don't want to misrepresent yourself or myself.
Mhm.
When I say the FEMA funding, $80 billion, excuse me, $80 million of FEMA funding, that's specifically for illegal aliens, not legal immigration.
Right.
Neither the Trump administration nor most Republicans, nor pretty much anyone in the nation has a problem with legal migrants who have gone through the proper paperwork and process. Although Democrats don't make a distinction, they
Hmm.
call all migrants are migrants, whether they are
Right.
legally or illegally in the nation. And so there is that difference. I think you're making it very clear that differentiation exists and should be emphasized. And I apologize if I wasn't. But I
Right.
am speaking about the illegal, those who have
Legal.
criminally entered America. Yes.
Yes, yes, and additional to that, I am pro immigration, pro legal immigration, not illegal immigration, and so yeah, I think that going forward, it's going to be interesting to see how Trump comes in. Saying that he cut $80 million to FEMA, I think that's a great thing. 70, what was the number? 70,000 per illegal immigrant.
73. 70,
Three.
based on the spending over the last 3 years under
Hmm.
the Adams administration with Governor Hochul,
Hmm.
$73,000 per illegal alien was spent. That's their housing, the little credit card they got for buying food, and for daily stipend to just buy random goods.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then I want to ask a rhetorical question to the audience. how much money do you make a year? How much is your government actually helping you with? How much support and resources do you feel that your government gives you? We're giving these people who are not tax-paying dollars, they're actually utilizing our tax-paying dollars and going I've heard that they're going to Miami, they're buying, used cars of 15, $20,000 in valuation. I'm seeing that they're going on, luxury vacations, and they've got the top floor at the Roosevelt, which today, I heard that it was closing down. But it, ask a regular New Yorker how much money they're making. They don't even get that much. You don't even see anywhere close to $73,000 in a
Well,
city where 150,000 doesn't even make you comfortable. So
true.
it's I can't even really put an answer to it. It's really just common sense. I can't understand how anybody else would think that this is okay. It's
Well,
not.
uh, the average American citizen makes about $33,000 a year.
Yeah.
Just to put it in, since you're asking for the context, the average American citizen makes about 33,000. So they've been spending about double what the average American citizen makes in a year
Right.
for being someone who illegally entered the United States. You mentioned the Roosevelt. That was one of several three-star hotels
Hmm.
that were, well, a friend of mine, a libertarian, in fact, Larry Sharp mentions, this is part of the illegal alien industry where all the hotels they're guaranteed big checks from the government, so they take in all the illegal aliens rather than actually service public, which now the Roosevelt has to go back to dealing with real people again. So
Right.
that'll be interesting. Uh, so you are saying that you do support the Trump administration in his efforts to enforce the immigration law of the United States. Again, he
Yes.
hasn't done anything that's outside the law. He's been
Mhm.
trying to enforce law, and you agree with that.
1,000%.
Okay. Uh, we do have a question from the chat. And by the way, this is the same individual who just said that's your boy. So I assume Joshua is one of your fans. So that's
Yes. Yeah. To say the least.
hey, never a bad thing. Good to know. And Joshua was mentioning, what are you going to do different than the current city council member who, to be fair, her name is Farah Lewis, who
Hmm.
has never faced a opposition before. What would you do different than what she is doing at this time?
I think it's very simple to, make a contrast to her, being that I asked around Newkirk Plaza, just to put it into perspective. I asked around Newkirk Plaza. I asked down in Flatbush Junction. I asked all the way down towards Canarsie in a small little area. I forgot exactly where it was. Um, do you know who your councilwoman is? Do you know who Farrah Lewis is? And like, who the hell is Farrah Lewis? So it's not hard to make a distinction. What I'm going to do. I'm actually going to, get my hands dirty, boots on the ground, and be a active member of my community like I've been doing for 22 years. It's not about exactly what I'm going to do, because that's a position that I'm going to learn and really adapt to as soon as I get in. And I'm going to be learning that from my other constituents who have been there longer than me. But the important thing is that I'm going to get deep into the community and understanding the problems that we currently face and how we're going to be able to overturn that. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I do become city councilman is redistribute the money back into the communities directly. There's no reason for us to be overfunding public schools that are severely underperforming. I read that 33% of fourth graders can actually read to grade level. It's about 28% for math. Something is wrong. So redistributing that to allow nonprofits who are within a community, who understand the dynamic in that community, who understand the demographic in that community, and be able to empower them to, educate and to actually be active members of that community is going to be extremely influential. And facilitating my own workshops, facilitating my own events going on for the community is going to be a big part of my campaign. It's going to be the theme of my campaign.
Okay, so you want to be actively involved with your community and trying to make some of the changes, whether it be we're talking about immigration initially, you're talking about education now, and trying to supplement or
Yeah.
highlight the failures in there. Uh, but you
And
mentioned about the failure of some of the students to be able to read. Now, I have to admit, I immediately thought of the statement both by Joe Biden
mhm,
and by Kathy Hochul. Hochul saying that uh, young black and Hispanic men in the Bronx
yeah,
don't know what a computer is.
it's
It makes me think of when Joe Biden said that blacks and Hispanics don't know how to use the internet. Uh, I don't think that's what you're saying. I
no,
think you're
not at all.
saying that the education system has failed,
Yes.
but I want to be sure about that. So I'm asking you that question. Do you agree with Joe Biden, Kathy Hochul, or is there a different way that people should understand your opinion of education?
No, definitely not. And I think that that statistic should be up to interpretation. What do you measure success to be for your child? Do you want them to go to a school where they're prioritizing social agendas over simple arithmetic, simple English, science, social studies, the same things that, we were taught? And I'm speaking about an older generation, as opposed to the generation right now.
Mhm.
The things that we were taught, are they being taught the same things? Are they being held to that level of, or that standard, should I say? I don't think that's the case at all. So again, going back to, what I'd like to do to redistribute that wealth back into the communities for demographics that can be actually represented by the schools. New York City is the most diverse city in the world. You can't actively supplement every single demographic that walks into a school, especially a school that'll be filled with 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 students at a time. I mean, we don't pay our teachers enough to even uh, carry out half of that. However, now they have to take on 30, 40, maybe even pushing 50. It looks like a college seminar when you walk into an elementary school room. And that is
Yeah.
also because we're seeing a lot of children with the illegal immigration going on that are being pushed into these classrooms without actually being prepared for this society. So
Okay.
it's definitely, multi-layered in that aspect, but definitely disagree with Kathy Hochul, Joe Biden, and I think that our schools need to do better. If not, they need to be, you know, audited and looked into.
But, well, that seems to be a fair thing. Audit and see what's worked and what hasn't worked. Okay, I can understand that. Let me jump from education. So we've talked a little bit about illegal immigration. We've talked a little bit about education. We're talking about communities. And one of the things that affect communities very deeply,
Hmm.
as we mentioned before, and I think is a recurrent theme, it's like the number one issue in New York, is crime.
Yeah.
And this is something that the New York City Council so far has been ineffective. Kathy Hochul has been ineffective. Eric Adams have been ineffective in dealing with crime overall. But we also see that they seem to be shooting themselves in their own foot. As an example,
Hmm.
there is you may have heard about the bill. There is the criminal groups database, which you may or may not be familiar with. I
Hmm.
know a lot of people aren't. So,
Yeah.
for the audience that may not be familiar with that, New York City's police department does collect data about gangs, whether it's MS-13 or the Venezuelan gangs that have been importing drugs and human trafficking in New York. They collect data about the members, the tattoos, slang words that they may or may not use, graffiti that they may use to mark their territory. They have a database of all of this information and much, much more.
Hmm.
Potential members and territories, all of that in their database. And they use this to investigate crimes and to try and reduce gang violence overall. Whether or not that's been effective is a larger question, which we can get into as well. But that's what they're doing now. At this moment, the New York City Council are trying to remove and to not just to eliminate. Again, it's called the Criminal Groups Database. They are currently trying to put forth a bill that will not only eliminate this database, but inform anyone on there. So, criminal gang members would be notified of that they exist on the database and what about them is in that database. So, if that would mean that we would be telling MS-13 members, Venezuelan gang members, whatever, gang members from wherever in the world they are, we would be saying, oh, yeah, here's the graffiti marker that we've identified represents your gang. And this is where you've put it so we know where your territory is. That we know that you use certain slang in social media to identify members and to give them messages. And they want this all revealed to the gangs. This is what the New York City Council is trying to do right now. They are trying to help criminal gangs be notified of the way that the police department is trying to investigate them and prevent them from committing more crimes. As a potential city council member, would you support their effort to remove this bill, or would you try to uh, uh, support this bill? Mind you, I should mention the argument by the Democrats in the city council who are trying to remove this. Their answer is, well, it's racist. That's their reason to get rid of it, and why they need to notify the gang members and suspected gang members is because, well, it's racist. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, that bill has got to go. Very simply, it's got to go. I that whole racist card, it doesn't work in too many other scenarios that there's not really a systematic, setback. First and foremost, I want to ask, how are you going to find these individuals if they're undocumented? Uh, I mean, where do they come up with this stuff? It's like we're trying to fight against our own people, the very people that they come every 4 year. Hey, how you doing? Oh, hey, nice to meet you. My name's Farrah Lewis. I support, I support criminals coming into our neighborhoods and committing crimes and then getting out the next day. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, Mike. That very simply, hands down, that bill has got to go. I have nothing more to say on that.
By the way, in case anyone's wondering, I'm actually quoting this from an article by The Gothamist that came out, and let me confirm. Oh, I had the date right in front of me. I believe it was today by The Gothamist. So this is current actionable, an actual bill right now. So this is as real world as we get, as in touch with current politics as we can get. It's actively being thought about right now. And I don't know that many members, many individuals across New York realize this. So to be clear, you would not support revealing this information
No,
to gang members and or potential gang members.
absolutely not.
Do you believe it's racist for the New York Police Department to collect data about criminal gangs and potentially criminal gang members to protect the public?
Absolutely not. No, it protects everyone.
Okay. If you were to be notified that a member of the New York Police Department used any information as a means of racism and to impact someone because of a racial or prejudicial manner, would you protect that police officer or would you punish them?
No, they would be punished. There's no room for that kind of corruption and utilizing, our government and our laws to, facilitate an agenda, whether that be a personal agenda or a collective agenda. There's no room for that. So anybody that would, if we're talking about this situation,
Mhm.
anybody that would utilize that bill or that protection to overstep and fulfill a certain agenda, that would not fly with me at all. I would not support that officer in that situation.
Okay, so you're not giving them a blanket, um, because this is often how it's worded in social media. Oh, well,
Mhm.
then you're giving them just free reign. They can do anything they want. So that's not correct. You actually are willing to hold them accountable, but at the same time, you're willing to give them the tools. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, I think justice is not a black and white scenario. There's certain circumstances where you have to really look into the facts of every case, and see exactly what the motive is. That's why we have that process in place. So definitely, it's not a blanket statement where NYPD needs to be protected and acquitted under every circumstance. But definitely, they need to be able to do their jobs to the best of their abilities, and that's really all they can do.
That makes me think of a question that we often hear. I'm in the Bronx, which has a lot of illegal aliens, and at the same time also has a lot of crime,
Hmm.
which doesn't necessarily mean one equals the other, but they just happen to both be true facts.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I know that a lot of people, whether they openly say so, many people privately will say they want the police. They want the police, and if not the current levels, they want more. And we lost a lot of police officers because of Kathy Hochul's interpretation of mandates and requirements. There, we're seeing that change, but that's why we have fewer police today than we did in 2019. Uh, is that also true in Brooklyn? Are people willing to have a police force, or do they want to see it restricted? Because we hear a lot of the further left you go, and many of the far left members of New York City's council say, oh, well, we need to get rid of the police or diminish the police or get rid of all prisons, bail reform.
Hmm.
These things are what they're pushing for, but yet in polling, we see very often the exact opposite being said by constituents, by residents of the city.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from the non politicians in this reference?
Yeah, I think it's changing right now. It's in the process. It's not fully there where the community is 100% in support of the police, unfortunately. But we're seeing that now. There's an understanding that crime is so rampant in our streets, and even we, the citizens, are not allowed to do anything in New York. The protection laws where you can't the self-defense laws where you can't really protect yourself unless you're begging on the floor, please don't kill me, please don't kill me. You can't even defend yourself in that scenario. People are understanding that now the first call is going to go to the police. There's no other way to go about it unless until you get to that point that now you're in the wrong. People are understanding that new dynamic, that before it was, you could call the cops, but initially you're expected to defend yourself.
Mhm.
Now it's you can't defend yourself, and the cops can't really get to you. And when they get to the scene, they're not allowed to really do too much. And then if they do go and arrest your attacker, then your attacker's getting out the next day. So all around, it's a failure of the system completely, and Brooklynites are seeing it. And it's again, it's shifting. It depends on where you go in the community and how far the far left has infiltrated. I know deeper into Flatbush, you see a more far left Democratic side. But when you get into moderate areas, the people of Middle Eastern descent or Caribbean descent, now you're starting to see a little bit more of a pro police backing.
Okay. Uh, so I take it in the communities you're looking to represent, they have a respect for the police. They're not looking to burn down police stations, um, but yet they still want to maintain control over the police.
Yeah, the majority. I would say the majority are looking to support the police, but it's definitely not where I would like it to be. So, as city councilman, I definitely want to rehabilitate the relationship between the police force and the community.
Okay. Let's switch gears again. We, a lot of time, believe it or not, we've already gone through 45 minutes. It's
Wow.
amazing how fast these things go when we're having an in depth conversation. And I appreciate the audience that are leaving comments both now and after we are live. Always looking forward to seeing all the comments out there. And I do suggest people again reach out to Elijah, Mr. Diaz, afterwards to ask questions more in depth and directly to you.
Mhm.
But I want to jump again for a moment to a different topic, which again affects New York City. It affects New York politics on the local level and the state level. And this is breaking news. Not everyone's heard about this. That is, you may be aware of Congressman uh, Richie Torres,
Taurus.
the New
Yeah.
York 15th District member. He's my congressman, to be exact.
Mhm.
And he has just come out and he has endorsed Andrew Cuomo. And
Mhm.
multiple sources in politics are now saying that Andrew Cuomo has definitively said that he will 100% he will run for mayor of New York City. Now, for
Mhm.
those who are not familiar, you may have heard the name Cuomo before. Andrew Cuomo was the former governor of New York before Kathy Hochul. He was her boss. He resigned in disgrace because he covered up the death of 16,000 New York City residents in elderly care because of the pandemic and the lockdown. And then he covered that up. Those deaths were covered up. And in addition to that cover up, which is a federal level crime, we also saw that he was investigated by Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, a Democrat, for 7 counts of sexual assault. Letitia James, at the end of her investigation, found 11 cases of sexual assault. And Cuomo decided to resign with $25 million in donations, and the Democrats dropped all the charges and ended all investigations. He has now said that he wants to run for mayor. People have many different feelings about that, but that's the background. That's the breaking news that we're hearing now. Some of it is rumor, some has been confirmed. Richie Torres did, in fact, endorse Andrew Cuomo, for running for mayor. Even with that background, what do you feel about, given that background of Andrew Cuomo, which you may or may not be familiar with,
Mhm.
given what that could mean on many levels? Well, first of all, let me ask you, what does Andrew Cuomo mean to you as a New Yorker, given his background? And how does that make you feel about New York politics moving forward if a Cuomo is in charge of New York City?
Well, Andrew Cuomo, to be honest, he doesn't really mean anything to me. It speaks for itself. The reputation, disgraced as a governor, and he led into the hellhole that we have with Kathy Hochul. So definitely not a big fan of Andrew Cuomo. But I think um, the tale of New York politics is now the Democrats have nobody left. They're running on fumes. They ran Eric Adams, hoped for the best with him, and now they're trying to completely reverse and take him out. And now you have Andrew Cuomo that's coming into the race, and it's like, why? I think that's the big question. Why? It's a really a slap in the face to just all of the voters who, especially Democratic voters. I'd feel bad if that was the candidate. If I was a Democrat loyalist, you know, that Andrew Cuomo is the guy that we're going with. Definitely, I'm not a fan of him at all. But you know, I say go for it. I say go for it. That gives way for Curtis Lewa to come in and really do some damage in the polls. And when it comes to election day, I think that he's got a very good shot this year, and I support him.
Okay. Well, and I have to admit my own bias here, obviously. I think it came across. I am not a fan of Andrew Cuomo. So if that question came across as being somewhat loaded, perhaps it was, maybe not. These are all factual things I've said about Andrew Cuomo. All of it is well documented internationally. So nothing's untrue what I've said about his history. That
Mhm.
is his record.
Yeah.
Whether he likes it or not, it is his history. And these are the current events right now. Some Democrats, obviously, Congressman Richie Torres, doesn't care about 16,000 Americans that died. He doesn't care about the cover up. He doesn't care about the, according to Letitia James, 11 cases of sexual assault. None of that matters. He wants to see Andrew Cuomo as mayor. I
Mhm.
agree with you personally, and I'll mention that I can't get past that history myself.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
some Democrats, at least Andrew Cuomo, believes that's the case. Uh, but obviously, if he does run, and if he were to win,
Mhm.
knowing that many people, not just Republicans, not just independents, not just libertarians, many people on the left, even the Green Party, the progressive movement, would have issues with someone with that kind of history, that background, and the rumor of many, many cases of corruption. They would have some problems with him. Would you be able to work for a mayor? Obviously, you support Curtis Sliwa, who is the presumed Republican candidate for mayor.
Yep.
But assuming that he didn't run or he didn't win and Andrew Cuomo were to win, would you be able to work with a mayor like a Cuomo if he were elected by the New York people?
Yeah. I think it goes back to even the presidential election. I don't think that he will win. Even Democrats who absolutely couldn't stand Trump voted for him because they saw the exact dynamic of what was going on. So
Mhm.
definitely, you know, as much as I don't like Andrew Cuomo, he would presume to be the mayor in that situation. Um, and I'm more so focused on the people, on the actual issues itself. So unfortunately, in that scenario, I would have to deal with him, but I would most likely deal with my constituents beforehand before reaching out to Andrew Cuomo of all people to seek support on a bill.
Right. Now, I hope I didn't make that sound like, oh, are you going to support him? No, that's not what I'm saying. And I want to be clear. But there is political realities.
Yeah,
Sometimes someone you don't support is your colleague or someone that's in
right,
an elected office, and you have to deal with them.
right.
Um, that is a political reality, and that's what I wanted to address: is that potential political reality, not whether or not you support someone. So that's a
Yeah,
different question.
yeah. Again, I think it would be more so. I'd like to work more with my constituents on that end, people who are actually fighting for, the people of New York City, not Andrew Cuomo, who's fighting for himself. But again, it's one of those things. My answer to you is, if I have to work with him, I will, but I will not prioritize that by any means.
Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't put words in your mouth or
Right,
make
right,
it seem that way. So,
right.
uh,
But hopefully that's not the case.
no, well, hopefully we'll never
we're,
have to
we're
deal
we're
with that.
working we're working against that.
I mean, that's my personal preference. But
Yeah, likewise.
now, so we've covered a lot of ground here
Mhm.
in the space of about an hour, on many different issues that affect people throughout all of New York, as well as the the City Council District 45 in Brooklyn,
Mhm.
that you look to represent in this election. You're going to go out and get petitions starting tomorrow.
That's right.
Um, and I'm sure that we've given a lot of food for thought for many people who will see this, not just in the next couple of days, but in the months coming up to the election, all the way until November. But I haven't covered everything, obviously. There's many issues more. I always look forward to speaking with you in the future.
Of course. Yeah.
Let me take a moment to give you an opportunity to, is there a subject that I haven't covered? Is there a topic I haven't addressed that you believe should be mentioned at this time, that we haven't had a chance to address?
I think there's two of them, and I'll put them together a bit.
Go right ahead.
I think that right now, seeing that, again, I'm 22 years old. I'm Gen Z, and I'm seeing that a lot of my generation, a lot of my close friends, acquaintances, they really aren't that interested in politics. And I don't think it's even that they're not interested, because they're pretty up to date on the news, but they just are fearful of politics. And you see that nature, that radical nature, where it's not that the youth can even get involved. Again, you have that dynamic where if you don't agree with the far left, you're going to get rung up and left to dry. And if you go a little bit too far right, you're going to get a bit of the same thing. So again, we're having that problem that the youth is not going to be engaged in politics. And what that's going to lead to, again, is an Andrew Cuomo having to run for mayor because there's nobody left, or another Eric Adams, or another Kathy Hochul. My slogan for this campaign is leadership of the new era. And that's exactly what I choose to represent. I represent the youth in this matter, and the youth, they value different things, and one of those things is actually entrepreneurship. And we're seeing that being in New York City, where it's unaffordable, and people have to work a second job, a third job, just to make ends meet. People are beginning to build their own businesses and say, hey, why am I working for somebody else when I can work for myself and build my own legacy? So that's something that is really very important to me. And I want to speak out to the youth, even if, you know, um, you're one of my elders. I'd love for you to share this with your children, your grandchildren, your niece, your nephew, and get them involved and show them that, hey, this kid is 22 years old and he's taking on the city of New York. He's taking on the one of the biggest challenges that you can have in this city, one of the biggest spots that you can try to fight for. And we have this youth that's scared and fearful for their future. They don't know what the future holds, and they feel like they have no control over that. So I want to be able to come in and inspire that leadership. Not, you have to rely on me for your benefits, for your food stamps, for your Medicaid, because I'm the one that's gatekeeping and holding all the resources. No, I want to be the candidate that's actually going into the communities and telling you, hey, do this for yourself. Become self-sufficient in for yourself first and foremost, then for your family, then for your community. And most importantly, you're doing it for God. That's what holds me accountable, and I think that's what the next generation needs to understand, because we've lost that value. We've lost conservative values, not in the way that we're oppressive to someone who doesn't look like us, talk like us, or think like us. We're not conservative in the values that we have for ourselves, and in our own morality, and in our own way of saying, hey, I have the ability to make a name for myself, to be present as a leader of my household, as of my community, of my school, of my job. We've lost that, and that's going to be something that is extremely important to me, and I really hope that it's important to all of you watching, and for the next generation to pursue that kind of that tenacity, that drive that I have.
I gotta say, you said something that I kind of say often myself. It's the old proverb that many Republicans have, many conservatives, many independents have. It's what America does around the world. Teach someone to fish rather than feed him fish, because they'll always come back tomorrow for another fish
Mhm.
if you're the one who gives it to them.
Right.
But if you teach them to fish, well, they can go and help them now, but now that they know how to do it for themselves, they don't have to rely on you.
Mhm.
That's a very different way of looking at the world than we see in many aspects of New York State politics right now, which is very go and beg to the Democrats and you'll be given your handout, your daily allotment.
Right.
That's somewhat of my own point of view on that.
And I agree with you 1,000% on that.
By the way, I think we've got one of your close fans watching the show. Uh, it seems your mom's watching, just so you know.
Of course.
Excuse me.
She watches everything I do.
I gotta love it.
Mom, I love you.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say. I
I
love
love
it.
it when it's your mom's there. So how can I not say hello to your mom and thank you for being involved and showing your support for your son? I love that. Beautiful thing to see.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you had saw it. I saw the message there, so I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah.
Um, yes, it is inspirational to see that you're also reaching out to young people. I think that's important. We don't hear that enough. That young people are invited to be involved in the politics. So I find that of interest. To everyone who's been watching, we've only had an hour, and this is just an introduction to a first time candidate, by the way.
Yep.
A lot of people may not realize that this is the first time. You're not someone who's been dealing with politics all your life or been
Yep.
deeply involved with politics like someone old and crusty like myself. Yeah, I know. I got the gray hair for it. It's okay. I admit it. I got the gray hair. It's been doing this a bit. Um, but that's why we encourage younger people to always be involved, no matter what.
Hmm.
Uh, we've covered so much ground in just an hour, and I hope this catches people's interest. The point isn't to convince you today. The point is to get you involved today, to ask more questions, to seek out Elijah and many other candidates of whatever political party and ideology, to get you involved in the process, make you aware of the issues, and then you can make your own decision. That is the statement of this channel, above and beyond any opinion I may personally have or anyone that I interview. And I am open to interviewing not just Republicans or libertarians, but Democrats as well, if they wish to come on. I always say this, and I want to make sure that that's always clear. That being said, I have my own preferences, and I do not lie about that. Of course, I do. Uh, I want to make sure that this won't be the only time that we speak to you, Elijah. And I also want to make sure that we do try to cover various events throughout the year of things that are happening in politics. Do you have events coming up in the near term?
Yeah, I do. I have two. Really just getting the ground running. I have the Newkirk Plaza Cleanup Day on March 9th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're meeting up in Newkirk Plaza. I've already gotten the resources from the Department of Sanitation, and we're going to be cleaning up the area between. I'll give you guys the area so you know what to expect. Between East 17th all the way up to Coney Island Avenue, on in between Newkirk and Foster and Newkirk Plaza. So that's going to be one of the first. The next one I'm still setting up. It's going to be a fundraiser, but I want to kind of get away from the formality of politics and really bring everybody together. So the suits and jerseys fundraiser will be coming, I assume, on March 15th, but you'd have to follow up on my social media and on my website for a little bit more information when I get it.
All right. So, two things for people to look forward to: one, to help clean the neighborhood effectively, to get hands on and be part of the community and part of cleaning the community that we all live in. And the other one being a fundraiser, a way to mingle and to share in the celebration of support for you.
Right.
Okay. And these are both coming near term in March.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yes.
And how long is the petition season? You're starting in tomorrow. So, as I recall, that normally means it ends in the third
April
week of
3rd.
March.
April 3rd.
April 3rd. Okay.
April 3rd. Yeah.
They keep changing the rules and the dates on these things. I
Yeah.
hate
The
that.
last day to file is April 3rd. Yes.
So people will be you will be able to accept. Again, let's mention the petition process. It is when a individual who's in a party, so in your case, a Republican, you
And
go
conservative
out and
as
speak
well.
to other Republicans. They sign a form saying, "I want to hear this person in the campaign for this office." So it's basically just saying, "Yeah, I want him to run."
Yeah.
And you get the signature, and with these signatures, that gets you onto the ballot. That makes sure you're running in November. And people can know you can only get that from members of your own party.
That's correct.
All right. So people who are, if you're a Republican, you have interest, please seek out Elijah. You'll be able to get a signature for him. If you're not sure what party you're in, reach out to Elijah. I'm sure he'll find out for you real quick.
Yep.
And if you need to register as a Republican, I'm sure he will be able to help you, him, and his team. Um, I
And
think.
conservative as well. For anybody who's
Oh,
scared to wear the bad, evil banner of the Republican Party. Yeah, I'll be running on the conservative line as well. I'll be
okay,
participating.
so multiple lines. So you're not just one line, but multiple lines, which
Yes,
is important in New York State. That's good. Conservatives as well. So conservatives can also reach out to you.
yes.
Yeah, I am one of those big. Yeah. I'm one of those things that don't exist. Oh my God, it's a black Republican, a black Hispanic Republican. They don't exist. Here I
Yeah.
am. Hello. Been doing it for 57 years. I'm here.
Hey, I'm the youngest one. Hey.
Yeah. uh, with that said, I think you're going to have a great future. I look forward to covering some of the events as we go forward. And I look forward to being able to do another interview with you on some of the issues to really delve and find out more about you. Well, it's always interesting to see how someone feels about an election as a first time candidate as they go through it, because
Yeah.
it's I've run for Congress, I've run for county legislature. Having run for an office, it's very different than what you think it would be first time you run.
Even I'm learning it right now, just before petitioning even begins.
No, it's so much more work than people think
Yes,
it is.
definitely.
Not nearly as glamorous as the movies make it out to be.
Yep. Yep.
So
100%.
we'll definitely follow up with you as we go through the entire election process.
Mhm.
Uh, is there any final thought? I have up on the screen your website, and I've had that up for a little bit. I'll have that in the link in the description after the show. But is there any other parting thought you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah. I want people to be able to reach out to me and be able to have that conversation on both sides of the aisle, whichever one you come from. And I want to make it a public statement that I am committed to being transparent and accountable and ethical and equitable as my political career advances. And that's really the value that I stand on. That's the value that my mother instilled in me, and that's the value that I'll continue to go, God willing. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
God bless you all, everybody that's watching. God bless you all, and look forward to seeing you guys along the campaign trail.
Folks, do me one favor. Do not let this be the only news media that covers Elijah Diaz and many of the candidates that are Republican and conservatives. I'll even go so far as the Green Party, the DC. You know what? We see the mainstream does not believe in your right to hear other voices, to hear people who aren't pre-approved.
Hmm.
You should have that right. In fact, the Constitution says you absolutely have the right to hear from anyone so that you can make your choice. I've given Elijah Diaz the opportunity that the New York Times will not give him, that CBS and ABC will not give him.
Hmm.
Well, let's change that.
Yep.
Reach out to them, say, you know what? Here's one interview. Why don't you give him another? Let's give him the opportunity to be heard, because I think that's important for every election if we truly want them to be fair and free and open.
Hmm.
With that said, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Whoa. I got a comment in here. Another comment before we go. Great interview. Card red penalty. I don't know what that means, but great interview. So, great interview is good enough for me. I'm good with that part alone. I want to thank you, Elijah Diaz, for taking the time to speak with me. I look forward to hearing great things about your success during the petition process. Folks, I want to thank you for checking out the program on Wednesday. There is, of course, the Wednesday roundtable with the Liberty First Foundation. And of course, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. This Sunday, I was doing it even though I had a fever and I was sick as a dog, about 101. It was my fever, believe it or not, folks. And we did the show then. We do the show every week, virtually every single week for the last 8 years in a row, and we will continue. So, with that said, I thank you for your time tonight. Please share this with your friends and everyone else. And until the next time, I thank you. Be well.